A record number of migrants have now made their way across the Channel since January, despite the Prime Minister's promise that he was going to get those numbers down. According to the latest Home Office data, another 257 people made that very dangerous crossing in 4 boats on Sunday. It takes the provisional total for the year to 12,901. That's up 17%, recorded at the same time last year, up 8% on the same period in 2022. So it could mean that we are now on for another record year of boat crossings, despite, like I say, the Prime Minister claimed that he was driving those numbers.
So that's 50,000 now since Mr Sunak became Prime Minister with that, and then made that famous pledge to stop the boats. We've hit 50,000. It actually topped 50,000.
Yes,
do continue.
Yes, and it looks like it's going to go in more on calendar year, because that's what the Prime Minister records it as, which the record high for a calendar year was 45,700 in 2022. So that's the record high. It looks now that we could smash that if the numbers continue to be so high. Nigel Farage, the Reform Party leader, has called this an invasion.
Well, I warned that huge numbers would come. I even said there might be an invasion, which of course is the rudest word you could possibly use in BBC land. But now 4,000 boats and 128,000 people later, it does look like it's been an invasion to me. And it's mostly young men who are coming from countries that are known to have terrorism, coming from countries with gang culture, coming from war zones.
And last night, like you said, Nick, the Prime Minister, he was taken to task on his failure to stop those small votes at that election debate hosted by The Sun's Never Mind the Ballots programme. He insisted he would get those flights off to Rwanda and claimed that migrants were queuing up on beaches in Calais just waiting for a Labour government.
Those illegal migrants will not be on planes to Rwanda. They will be out on our streets putting pressure on public services. And, by the way, I can tell you now, they are queuing up in Calais waiting for a Starmer government so they can come here and stay here.
Oh,
that is the choice.
800 migrant crossings in a day are happening on your watch, not Keir Starmer's.
So that is a choice at this election, right? I know people are frustrated about lots of things, but you've got to focus on that choice ahead of you.
And the Labour leader Keir Starmer hit back at those claims. He said his plan to smash the criminal gangs and put in place a new Border Force command was the answer.
The numbers this year of people crossing in small boats are record numbers under this government, and nobody should be making that journey across the Channel. Nobody. It's a breach of our borders. It's also, I think, a matter of national security, because the government should be deciding who comes to this country, and we need to know who it is that's coming to this country. So we have to deal with it. I take it very seriously. I accept it's a test of government.
Now, there is, of course, clear blue water between both of the main parties on this one. The Tories want those Rwanda flights to take off. Labour say they would stop them, scrap that policy. But there are a lot of questions, I'm sure, for both sides on exactly what they would do. For the Tories, why on earth haven't they sent those planes off already when they've had plenty of time to do so? And in last night's debate, it got the audience very fired up. Of course, we know it's still a really big debate, an election issue. Who is going to be the one to solve it? One for James Cleverly and Yvette Cooper later on.
Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor, reporting it is, as Natasha said, the front page of The Sun. We'll give you more of that in our review of the newspapers. Let's bring in a couple of people to help prompt our conversation. We can, of course, take your call now if you wish to book it through to James Cleverly and Yvette Cooper a little later in the show. Let's bring into the conversation Ben Habib, who's Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Thank you for coming on. One of the questions that they will face will be how exactly we know the problem, as was spelt out by Nigel Farage. What would your party do to actually bring the numbers down? Mr Habib, good morning.
Good morning. Well, the problem that both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party have is that they don't see border control as controlling our border. Rishi Sunak's view is that actually you let people in and then you pass domestic legislation which allows you to deport them to Rwanda with a treaty that he's got with Rwanda. That doesn't work, because it's mired in all sorts of legal problems. Keir Starmer's solution doesn't work either, which is using counter-terrorism measures to bring together 4 domestic British agencies, MI5, Crown Prosecution Service, Immigration Agency, and one other, the name of which escapes me. He says to bust the smuggling gangs. But the smuggling gangs aren't based in the United Kingdom, where the 4 domestic agencies are.
So that's why their ideas don't work, Mr Habib. My question actually was, what would your party suggest?
So our party recognises that you must have control of your borders. That is a physical process that requires a well-trained force to patrol our borders.
Are you suggesting the border
drones,
force aren't trained then, Mr Habib?
I'm suggesting the border force are acting like a taxi service rather than doing their job. And what you've got is this idiotic, ridiculous situation, Nick, where we're paying thick end of £1 billion to the French to watch their navy escort dinghies to the point of our territorial waters, where they are then met, having been radioed by the French Navy, by Border Force or RNLI, picking up these people and bringing them to the UK.
So what should the Border Force do with those dinghies?
And they should be stopped they should be stopped as they seek to enter our territorial water, which we have all the international right to do, and they should be required to go back to France. And if they don't go back to France, we should take them back to France.
You know that in some instances these vessels are virtually held together with string. They're taking on water, and you're going to try and turn them around.
They are.
So then everyone falls out, and presumably you have a rescue operation on your hands, do you, Mr. Habib?
You have a rescue operation, and you take them back to France.
Well, what?
But what I tell you what the problem here, Nick, is that all the policies are seen through the prism of the UK not enforcing its borders. That is encouraging people to make that journey across the channel, and that is not just endangering their lives, but as Nigel Farage extremely well set out in his little speech that you played back earlier. We are importing into this country people we know nothing about.
Mr. Habib, we pick them up and let's say hopefully that none of them will have perished at sea. What makes you think the French will accept them back in Calais?
Yeah, well, can I just say, by the way, the Belgians have used exactly this form of prevention of dinghies launching off their own shores, and they've had a 92% reduction in the last 5 years.
Just coming back to why would Calais accept an RNLI boat or a Border Force boat?
Well, we have to have it out with the French.
We have to have it out with the French. I see.
We will have to have it out. This is what border enforcement is. What you cannot have is the French Navy, bringing these people to our waters. It's completely wrong.
OK, Ben Habib, thank you for your time. You're Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Let's get an overview of the policies we know from the two main parties and, of course, from Reform UK. Frances Swaine is an asylum and immigration lawyer with the firm Lee Day, joining me now. Your input on what you have heard either from just now from Mr Habib or the other parties. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nick. Well, what we just heard now was really not very much law about the policy that currently does exist within the country. The Home Office does run a policy, however well or ill it is actually put into place at the moment. We heard a lot of populist rhetoric. We didn't really hear any law. What international waters might be between us and France and who would drown and who wouldn't drown, this wasn't addressed at all, although asked in your questions. So I don't think that what we just heard was anything but populist rhetoric for an election period.
Do you accept there is a problem with small boat crossings?
I think that the gangs, which draw together people often paying quite large sums of money, and put them in boats which cannot necessarily last the journey across the channel, is an issue which needs to be addressed. And that's not a legal view, that's a moral one.
People who say Britain is a soft touch, would you agree?
No, I don't think it's a soft touch. People have the right to come here and claim asylum. They have the right to become refugees. The numbers who are arriving are actually not very great at all. There may be more boats this year. The total number of people arriving last year to claim asylum was 29,437. We're a population in the United Kingdom of over 66 million.
Right,
so the percentage of people coming is actually very small. The majority of those in 2023 came from Afghanistan.
But if it continues at this rate, not just boat crossings, but by 2036, a population increase of 6.5 million, 6.1 million of whom will be migrants. Something like that has to be controlled. It's that you have to ask whether we have the facilities to actually cope with those sort of numbers, Frances.
We're not actually reproducing at a rate to keep our own population level at the moment without incoming migration.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that there should be no laws with regard to migration, and there
but
are.
I don't know that we can sustain 700,000 a year net, can we, or just under?
there should always be safe routes for people to come to this country. And at the moment, there are safe routes for people, for instance, coming from the Ukraine, where we've already issued around
Indeed.
about 200,000 visas.